Welcome back to Two Brothers Talking. I'm Israel.
And I'm Eli.
Again with us is Gabriella Heinz, of course, a great friend of ours, but she's a philanthropist and author in the current Miss Yuma County. Last week we talked about completing a reality check, right? Self-love, what that looks like, being able to assess your insecurities, working on the hard work that it takes to really identify what you need, and then asking for that. So walk us through what's that next step? What's the pillar that comes after self-love?
Absolutely. It's kind of twofold with self-love actually, which is funny. But it's healing from past relationships. And a lot of people, I know we talked about it in the last episode, walk into relationships with so much relational baggage. And it's because we never actually come face to face with it. We don't analyze where our minds are, how they've been affected because of our past relationships. We're not taking our thoughts captive. We let things run wild. And so now, where we could have amazing relationships, we have taken every hurt, every insecurity, every pain from family, friends, other significant others, and we're throwing it onto this new person that we're with. And it hurts our relationship. It puts strain. It's like a rubber band. Like we pull it after one relationship, and then that relationship ends, and we end up with a little bit more relational baggage and a little bit more. And eventually we're just going to snap. At some point, we have to let go of that tension and be honest about what's in front of us so that we can have healthy relationships that are not affected because of what happened to us 5, 10, 15 years ago.
So with that relationship baggage, I guess, is some of that what you're talking about, the projection of like, oh, well, so-and-so did this. So, I mean, when they do this, they've got to mean the same thing.
The first thing that I really want to emphasize when we are trying to heal from past relationships is writing down your hurts, being honest with yourself about what you experienced. And this is something that I and a couple of my friends actually got from professional counselors that changed our lives, literally, because we were finally able to experience our emotions fully so we could move on from them. Right? When I finally sit and I write down what I'm feeling in detail, in gruesome detail. I know it's hard, I know it's painful, and it's uncomfortable, but healing is hard. It is hard work. All of this is hard work. And when we put in the time, you will see the quality of your life improve. I promise. I promise. When you are willing to be honest with your emotions and sit face to face with them, experience them, and move forward. If you have a relationship where they were abusive to you, if you have a relationship where they were manipulative, write down the things that you remember that hurt your heart, and look at them and say, this was my past. This was everything I felt. And now I'm going to move on from it. Rip it up, put it in the shredder, throw it in the trash, but let yourself feel that emotion and stop downplaying it. The second key point to that is if you have had baggage from past relationships, please go see a counselor. I know there's a stigma about us somehow being super damaged or broken, and that's why we're finally at the counselor. No, going to a counselor is preventative maintenance. I know we were just talking about this. Like, you don't take your car in because it's about to explode. You take it in so you can have a routine checkup to preserve the longevity of the life of your car. We're the same way. Our minds are the same way. There are people that are trained to understand human psychology and give us tools and resources to be healthier people so that we can have healthier relationships. So please, please, if you take anything out of this podcast, because we're not professionals, we're doing the best we can with this, but we are technically not qualified at all, right? Please go to a counselor and get the resources from them that they have to offer, because it will change your life.
I think I really like the point of when you're tearing up that list and you're putting it in the shredder, right? Because you're not making this list so you can then go straight over to their house and say, okay, I remember every single thing that you did to me. Obviously, if you're able to have a healthy conversation with that individual once you've moved past the stage of where you're upset with each other, right? I think that could be healthy.
Yeah.
But I liked the point where you're saying, you know what, once you do experience this, you do say, you confront it basically, then you move forward because that's necessary for healing. You have to move past that hurt and being willing to accept that, because oftentimes we don't want to accept that we were hurt
Mm-hmm. Want to be
because
tough.
our pride was hurt at the same time as our heart. And so oftentimes our pride keeps us from acknowledging that, hey, we were hurt. We're human. We feel. And that's, I think, part of the equation of getting help is admitting that you need help in the first place. And then once you get that help, let's move forward in the process. I think that was, for me, that was most impactful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Next point in this that's really important is to stop jumping in and out of relationships when we are trying to heal from past relational hurts. We're in the middle of trying to fix something. We're working out all of the emotions and feelings and pains that we're carrying. And then we keep adding more. Like we keep adding to the pool of hurt, expecting the hurt to go away. And we get burned out because it's not, because we just keep inviting things in that are going to fuel the problem. And I get it. It's hard when you're single. Sometimes it's so easy to feel like you're alone. And it's not true. You are not alone just because you're single. What that tells me, though, and what that should tell you is if you feel that way, you're jumping in out of relationships, you feel lonely, you need to build a healthy support system because that is going to drive your healing from past relationships. That is going to set you up for success in future relationships when you have amazing men and women around you to encourage you, to hold you accountable, to say, these are the goals that you set. This is what you said you want to see through. Let's make it happen. And I'm not talking about friends that are always going to tell you what you want to hear, that are, always going to validate everything you do, even if it's not a good idea. We all have those friends. I'm talking about the friends that will say, hey, you need to get it together. We know this is not adding anything back to your life. When we stop jumping in and out of relationships, it gets so much easier to continue pressing forward in healthy relationship when we have friends that are encouraging and uplifting. We need to have our companionship needs met, and it does not need to be through a significant other.
And for our listeners, we talk about this all the time. You need to have yourself a circle of friends. Those accountability partners, those folks are going to have candid conversations with you. Be honest, be open, say the things that you don't want to hear, but you need to hear.
Yep.
Those are the folks that we're talking about.
Yeah. It reminds me of the rom-coms where, so-and-so just broke up. The main character broke up. And then there's the new love interest. Oh, man, getting in a relationship with them is going to fix everything. And there's that circle of friends that are like, oh, no, he's crazy or she's crazy because they did this one thing. That's not productive. Sometimes the best thing you need to be told is pump your brakes.
Yeah.
Take a moment, address the issue. And then once you analyze kind of where you stand and what you need, then, when you're ready to move forward. But sometimes we need that friend to just hold on, slow it down.
Yeah.
It's easy to move forward, but sometimes we got to slow down.
Well, and what in those rom-coms, what happens, right? This girl, Katherine Heigl, whoever it's going to be, sees Ryan Reynolds after she just got out of her breakup with her boyfriend who works at a law firm and immediately goes on the date. And then at some point in this relationship, she's so head over heels because he's a beautiful man, whatever. And then they have all of these jealousy problems. They have all of these anger issues. It's like high highs and low lows in these relationships. And then half the time it doesn't work out anyway.
Yeah.
A lot of these like movies, and my wife really liked this one show. I'm not going to, drop his name just for the sake of protecting it. But she really liked this one show, and I couldn't watch the show. I just couldn't watch it. And my wife would be like, why don't you like the show? I was like, realistically, in these movies, these shows, 90% of these problems can be solved with effective conversation.
Yeah.
Like, instead of like running in, jumping to conclusions, I can't believe you were doing that. What's going on? Like, this looks like this. Is it actually this? Do we need to maybe take a step back because we're rushing into things? Like, effective conversation solves most of this.
And on top of that, even going to the emotional aspect of moving from relationship to relationship without healing, I remember it was given to me in an illustration when I was a teenager. We went to this event as a group. Um, it was aimed at helping teenagers, really young adults, understand the implications of getting into relationships, especially like physical relationships,
Yeah.
and identifying the emotional implications that can have.
Yeah.
And so one of the illustrations was so vivid. That's what had the most impact of the entire event. The host called up a few volunteers, a gentleman and some young girls, and he held up this big wooden heart, and he had this chainsaw, and he cut that heart in half. And he said, oh, he told the guy, hey, okay, give it to this young girl. So he gives her that. And then he asks the young girl, okay, give me that heart back. And he cuts it in half again. And then he gives it to the next girl. And by the end of it, you're left with like 8 girls with little bits of this guy's heart. And it could be flipped. It could be, the other person, or, having a bit of that heart that you're giving each one, you're giving them a piece of your heart, but you never have that time for healing. And therefore you go into this relationship and they don't even have all of you.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about physically. I'm talking about emotionally and mentally. They don't have all of you because you don't have all of you.
Yeah.
So how can you give all of you if you don't even have it to begin with? So that was one of the most vivid examples I had as a young adult, understanding relationships matter, having healing from past relationships if you had past relationships, but also not going into this next one with that same baggage. It's important.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that if we're talking about self-love, because that's really what this whole segment is about, the last two, self-love is just learning how to be whole again, right? And in the most simple terms, it's learning how to be whole outside of another person, outside of needing to have a boyfriend or girlfriend, whoever. You are so confident in the person that you are, that you were created to be, and you realize that you're enough, regardless of whether or not a man or a woman says they want to be in a relationship with you. You're enough. Your identity is secured in knowing that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that in a way that's self-respecting, but also externally respectful, if that makes sense. What pops into my mind is my sister used to, I'm a proud woman. I don't need no man. It's like, it's good to have confidence.
Oh, that's a whole thing.
If you can be enough without having to push others away, if that makes sense. That being said, you don't also want to be like, I'm enough, but if he likes me, I'm good with that. But being, comfortable enough to say I'm enough. I don't need someone else to give me that value. I don't need someone else to give me my worth, while at the same time having that self-respect to say, I don't have to put others down to make myself enough, because that's really just that's kind of the underlying insecurity that comes in there.
Absolutely.
I have to push others away because that makes me feel like I'm enough. Well, if you have that good support system, which we talk about all the time, it's so necessary. You can have those needs met by a quality family, a quality friendship. A lot of the stuff that we look for, that companionship, that support, while it may not be romantic, it's being able to have that, you know what, I just need to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And where you can meet with friends and just lay your heart on the table, where you can just, meet with family, say, what, I'm kind of going through stuff. And you don't seek after that romantic relationship to say, well, I need a romantic relationship in order to do this. Well, no, you can do that without it. And that's okay.
Yeah. On kind of a funny segue before I finish out the last points of this, I wasn't going to break down love languages, but since we're on it, I think it's important. And this goes back to knowing your needs, but also being able to heal from past relationships so you can directly express what you need moving forward. There are 5 love languages, and we should be familiar with them. We should know what ours are so we can make it clear to our partner, to our friends, to our family, how we need our needs to be met. And I found this super funny meme that that broke down the love languages. But the 5 are words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. So in layman's terms, words of affirmation: your tacos are delicious. Acts of service: I made you tacos. Receiving gifts: here's a taco. Quality time: let's go out for tacos together. And physical touch: let me hold you like a taco. But All jokes aside, it's
Yeah.
so important that if you need words of
Yep.
affirmation, if you need someone to tell you, you look so beautiful today, or you are so kind. I really appreciate that I always feel heard by
Mhm.
you. Or if you need someone to just give you a hug because you're having a bad day, when we are able to recognize so clearly our needs, and this is an incredible tool, the 5 love languages. There's a book about it if you want to read it. So helpful, telling you it will improve the quality of your relationships. And just a great resource that the author put together. I can't remember who wrote it off the top of my head, but incredible resource, has changed so many relationships.
I've got it on my bookshelf at home.
I have it in the living room right now.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember.
See, everyone.
And
everyone.
I want to say there's even don't quote me on this, internet, but I want to say there's even a 5 love languages for singles.
It is.
That can
I
help
think
with
there is.
kind of determining
Gary
I think there
Chapman.
is.
We'll put a link if you're watching this on YouTube. We'll put a link
Gary
for
Chapman.
each version of it.
Yeah.
If you're single, I think there's for marriage.
Yeah.
And an engagement. We'll put the link down in the description if you're watching this on YouTube.
Yeah, very solid
resources.
book. Yeah, very solid book. My wife and I, when we kind of determined what our love languages were, like we kind of determined, oh, so that's why when I do this, it's meh. I get a meh response. It's not because they don't care.
Exactly.
But that's not how they interpret that
exactly.
I care for them. So there are different ways. If I want to express to my wife that I love her, I know I can do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know that if I spend all this time doing this huge thing, she's kind of melancholy about it because that's not how she receives or interprets love.
Definitely. I think knowing your love languages really frees up the possibility for insecurity and resentment to build up. Because if you're, and we all have our giving love languages, right? Like some of us are really good at giving words of affirmation or giving gifts, but our love languages are quality time. If we're constantly, buying our significant other or our friends gifts and they're quality time people, you're like, what the heck? I went through all this work to buy you Starbucks and you don't even care. Well, it's not that they don't care. It's that they just want to sit with you over a cup of coffee and talk about life. But now, because you're not appropriately meeting each other's love languages because you don't know what they are, now you're getting resentful, you're getting insecure, you feel like you're never enough for them, and it could just all be avoided.
I think that it's we were talking about movies earlier. You see this in a lot of movies about rebellious either teens or young kids where there's like problems at school. The dad's like working, dad or mom working like extremely long hours. You only see them every so often with their family, like 5 minutes out of the movie. And the other parents dealing with all these problems with the kid at school or at home. They're running away, they're beating kids up or whatever. And finally, that one parent that's working all the time, they somehow come to the realization maybe the kid went to the hospital or something like that. And they're having a conversation. They're like, I just really wanted to spend time with you. That's why I'm doing all this. And it comes down to the fact that we have to, one, know our own love language, but know either our friend, our spouse, our partner, our kids' love language, identify theirs and respect that love language. Lily, she is her love language is words of affirmation. That doesn't come naturally to me. But in order to love the way she needs to be loved, I have to learn how to do that so it becomes natural. And it's not that she doesn't love gifts, but when we were first starting out, I get these, because I like receiving gifts. And so I would be like, okay, I'm going to love you like I love me. I want to get you the biggest gift I can find. And it was like almost like she was unimpressed. And I was like, but
I got you.
Part of what
am I doing wrong?
Part of what, because
I love
part of what we went through in premarital counseling was communication is huge. So once we started communicating, I was able to be like, I love that you're getting me this gift, but is it more for you? Or is it for me? And once we had that honest conversation, we're like, no, you're probably right. It probably is for me because I'd want that, but you might just want the words of affirmation and a thoughtful gift. And so being able to walk through that, communication is at I think the core of that in any relationships type, or even if you're single, you're just dealing with friends, being able to know your love language and know others and then respect that. I think that's crucial.